It's always a pleasure to be joined by head coach of the Canadian men's national team. It's John Herdman joining us here on OneSoccer. Hello, John. We're less than a month away before you and the team get back together for what is going to be a massive month of June for the program. How big will it be both on and off the field for you guys?
Well, it's big, eh? It's big. I mean, to get the national team back playing in March, it just felt great. And coming into this June period, it's pretty unprecedented, Gareth, when you think of what's on the line. World Cup qualification, Octagon, but the way that it's formatted, two matches, which takes you into a playoff game. We put ourselves in a really good position with the goal difference going into these two matches. But that playoff game, I've never seen anything like it in all my time in football, where on the 8th of June, you have to wait until the 90th minute to know whether you're going to go to Belize, Haiti, or Nicaragua. And the complexity and the planning and trying to understand, how you set up COVID realities in 3 different countries. Even doing it in one country outside of Canada is being a challenge, but to think about you're excited for the football side, but as a leader of a program, there are so many other parts to this, as I explained to you, leading into March, where you're becoming an ambassador, a foreign ambassador, to find out how to get people into countries. Now we're looking at just the complexities of what CONCACAF have created in their competition program.
So you're dealing with a number of different unknowns here. The stakes are incredibly high. With that being said, John, based on your record-setting performance with the group in the month of March, you have to have more confidence with this team moving forward. How are you feeling about how the group performed last time out and what that may mean for the big month of June?
Yeah, the group are great. It's fantastic. I mean, having the guys back together, those 2 matches, we got a chance to pretty much play everyone in the group, in that squad of players, and to build that chemistry, the brotherhood, to get them connecting again and just feeling comfortable back in the red shirt. It was a tricky match against Bermuda, but I think that battle was won off the field when, they weren't able to bring in some of their top players because of COVID or not being able to get the right visas. And then the Cayman Islands, again, that was about putting ourselves in the best position possible to come into June so that we could control our destiny in what will be a tough match against Suriname. So I think, the football side's great. The squad's good. It's progressing well. We've had more Canadians playing in the MLS than we've ever seen. A lot of our players are collecting minutes in Europe. Kyle's scoring. Jonathan's top of the league. Atiba's on fire. It is really promising at the moment. Like I say, the squad's fine. I think from a fan's perspective, I'm not sure people would be aware of the sort of challenges that lie from just a logistics point of view of trying to get this team to one of these countries, but more importantly, to a country like a Haiti, which I think is going to be challenging.
Just quickly on that, John, now that the games are going to be played in June, it's not going to be in season for your European or players who are based abroad. Does it make things any easier at all to navigate through that?
I think, the June window is always complex anyway. Like the players are, staggered from, we have some guys that finish on May the 9th. We have some guys finish on May the 19th and some that finish on May the 23rd. And then others, the MLS boys, they'll play right up until May the 29th. So you've got this sort of staggered group. And I think given the realities of what many of these players have just experienced in Europe, which was a very heavy season, their families and mentally and emotionally, they need a break. So it's balancing, the fact that a player may not have played for nearly a month and a bit any competitive football before stepping on the field against Aruba or Suriname. So these are, again, just little things that you have to manage within your program, whether that's some of the remote work, convincing players to reduce their postseason holidays, to be on top of them, to really ensure that they put the team first with some of the decisions they make when they're in their postseason. And then at the same time, just the complexity of players that are, pushing to sign for new clubs, and the stresses and pressures that put on those players to be part of pre-seasons, etc. So it's not straightforward, Gareth, but I think in March what we've seen is a very committed group. There were two things that stood out for me in March more than anything. One was all of the players, the top players, committing to come in a time where they were putting their health and livelihood at risk. And, Atiba for me was a great example of that. It's a guy that is pushing to be at the top of his league in probably the twilight of his career. He's pushing to win a cup in that league. And, he's got 3 kids. And those windows are typically times where he goes into recovery mode. So, it shows that men are committed to take this country to the next level. And I think the second moment that really spoke to us was in the CanMNT game, where you had Alfonso picking the ball out the net on the sort of 6th goal. This is a kid that's just won everything in football domestically. And at the European level, earning big salaries, and no crowd, playing against an amateur team, and he's there, picking the ball out the back of the net and running it back to halfway, because they're clear, they're very clear and committed to, perform for this country, to take this country to the next level, which is the octagon for us, and to ignore the risks that have been put in front of them.
There's obviously, and for good reason, a lot of excitement around this group, John. It's been fun even tracking Canadian players and their progress within their club teams. But I know people like you have your eyes elsewhere. Suriname is going to be the biggest obstacle in this group. There's no doubt about that. And seemingly every week or two, they're adding more players who are changing their association from the Netherlands to Suriname to represent that country. We built a board of some of the players who've already played for them, some of the players who've committed to playing in June, and others who may, John. This is a lengthy list of quality players. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you get a proper read on the team that you'll be playing in, the second game coming up in June?
Yeah, it's going to be a test. I think, the silver linings of the cancelled matches in October, November, for many teams, there's been silver linings, and the silver lining for Suriname is it's given them, that window of 9 months to recruit up to 15 new players. So the local players that took them to Gold Cup qualification, those guys have been sort of sidelined, and a group of sort of Dutch national players with Suriname heritage have been called in. Guys, from Galatasaray, the captain, the centre back, guys from Feyenoord, from the Bundesliga. It's going to be a test. I mean, I think when we were put into this competition pathway, people said, well, it's just an easy route for Canada. But I don't think anyone had anticipated what Suriname was planning and what they were able to do during that period of time. I mean, it's taken them, certainly to become one of the top 10 teams in CONCACAF, maybe even one of the top 8 teams in terms of their squad valuations and experience, etc. So for us, it's just a test. It's going to be a hell of a challenge, and that's what our players want. It's what we need. And if you're going to qualify, why not qualify in a match that really is going to push your squad and everyone involved to the next level. it's just a shame we couldn't have played that match at home, and we got to play that in the United States without any crowds. We could have used the crowd in that game, but whatever comes at us, Gareth, we'll take it on. We're not waiting. We're in a take mindset, and you've seen that in March. And whatever's put in front of us, we'll get over it, around it, under it, to make sure we get into this octagon.
You mentioned it. That's supposed to be a home match for Canada. Obviously, COVID has dealt an entirely different reality for you and your team to face over the course of this qualifying campaign. Thankfully, you don't have to go to Suriname and play on a turf field and with extensive travel as well. But looking beyond, if you do get beyond this group, and of course this country is right behind you in that pursuit, you could potentially play a team like Haiti, where there's clear and present concerns, John, and we've covered it on this program right here, that the Belize national team were hijacked, held at gunpoint before on their trip to Haiti back in the month of March. But it seems like CONCACAF will allow games to go forward in that country. And I just can't see a scenario or a situation why CONCACAF would allow your team and all individuals, not to mention world superstars like Alphonso Davies, put them at clear and present risk, going to a place that doesn't seem safe from that vantage point, as well as a health vantage point right now. Is there a strong voice, is there a strong push within CONCACAF to have more of these games played at a neutral site for the time being, understanding all the variables and all the risks at play?
Yeah, I think for all of us, we just hope sort of common sense and the safety of the players are put in the front of minds of decision makers. I think that's all, as a head coach, we can hope for. And, I know our government has been pretty firm in, the health and safety of its people and the players by, ensuring that our game is played in a home away from home, which is in the USA, which arguably is a neutral site for anyone that comes in to play against us. So, I think common sense has prevailed in many situations. I know games were played in the Dominican, central venues were established. So, I just think it's from a player and staff's perspective, and families that are involved, it's a scary thought when you see, those YouTube clips and you understand that, those things are real. That's not pretend. It's a real situation, and there's not a fear of traveling. Like I've said, the football side of it, our squad's strong. We're excited to play Haiti if that's the team that we get, because, there's a little bit of history from the Gold Cup, and, a lot of these guys, when we've seen the pathway and that it could be Haiti as a qualification game, people were excited, to get that game back. So, yeah, the football side, brilliant, but, the travel is, if you speak to my wife, she's scratching her head a little bit here. But who knows? I mean, it could be Belize, it could be Nicaragua, and that's the other complexity. Like with one blow of a whistle, on June the 8th, we could be going to one of 3 different places. And that is something that I've never had to experience in my career before, in terms of working through the complexity of maybe having 3 hotels booked, 3 charter flights booked, COVID costs in each one of those areas. And then thinking about the cost of that, it just blows my mind. But, on the football front, yeah, we're fine. We're in a good space. The players are confident and happy and excited to come in for June. We just got to hope that some common sense prevails.
If the games play out like you plan and you do go on to advance to the final 8 teams in CONCACAF in terms of qualification for 2022, what would it mean for you and the players and Canada soccer at a whole? What's on the line here, John?
I just think it means everything to us. I mean, we're in a crazy time at the moment. Even the experience we had in March, it's very different. The Cayman Islands cancelling the game one moment and then the game's back on. It's just such a strange time, Gareth, that I think our group, we've really came together and we recognise there's a good opportunity, as we've seen with like Alfonso and his achievements, to really just bring the morale of the country up with the football achievements. And people enjoy this team. Like, we've had some down moments, but we've had some real ups. And if we have more ups in this next few months, then I think we can literally change football forever. And I think that's a curse, but it's also just a gift. And I keep saying this to the guys: whatever motivates you, the curse, the heaviness of that, or the opportunity of being that group of guys that did it in COVID times, given everything we're dealing with, what a special memory and moment that'll be. So it means a lot, like personally, professionally, and then from a legacy point of view for all of the people involved. It could be a game-changing moment, but not without its challenges, and we're getting ready for that.
There has to be value with a number of your players winning on the club level, John, like Borjan, Arfield, Wotherspoon won a trophy this season. Other players, David, Atiba, Laren, Davies, all pushing on to win domestic titles of their own. There has to be value in that. When you look at the overall form of a number of your players, I just wonder whose form might be sticking out to you at present time, like who's turning heads. Kyle Laren's an easy one. Mr. Four goals twice for his club this season, scored 4 goals for you in the last window as well. I just wonder your thoughts about just the overall makeup of the players that are available to you and the success they're having and how that might translate.
Yeah, I think when there's the obvious people, because playing at a tier 2 level in Europe or a tier 1 level in Europe, I mean that's top achievements for me. Like, to see players performing at the top of their leagues, and I guess being on that death ground every week where every result matters. And I think that's for Kyle and Atiba, Alfonso, Johnny. Those guys are like fighting to become champions every week. And I think that just brings with it a hardened mentality, the sort of mentality I think we need, that when the tough moments do come for us and we have a mistake in a game and a team gets back into a game, those sort of championship mindset players are there to come through. And that's important. But I think what stood out most, I just got so excited the first weekend of MLS, and then just that weekend starting, like when I first took over, the average was like 3 Canadians per weekend in the league playing. I think we had around 16 in that first weekend, and that to me, it's massive. I mean, whether you can talk about the MLS academies and what they've done to push people through, but you look at the CPL bringing a Joel Waterman to Montreal and giving him his chance. You look at Tyler Pasha, who's gone through, the USL pathway, and it just seems like we're starting to really, Canadians are starting to make their mark, and it's not just those guys. Like, if you looked at in Europe, we had Frank Sturring playing, we had Scott Kennedy playing consistently, Daniil back playing after injury, and Suwon. So like when I first took over, it was always like every weekend, it was like, because you looked at your players and there just wasn't enough accumulated minutes. And now you're starting to see that. And I think that's exciting. And more exciting for me is just how young that group is getting when you think of a 2026 focus. And just that message that goes out to a lot of youngsters when you see Baldissimo and you see Gutierrez and you see Tejon Buchanan, Ralph Priso, Noble Okello, Jaden Nelson, Schaffelberg, Zach Broguillard. I mean, all these young players getting game time. Derek Cornelius, I mean, he's on his way back now. I think that's exciting as well, Gareth, because in the past, you're just seeing a lot of those guys warming benches at that age. And I just feel people are embracing, let the kids play them younger, give them this shot.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
I'm with you on that. We just have a couple moments left. I have to ask you, you mentioned a lot of Canadian players who will be in contention to make the squad that's going to go on and play these important qualifying matches. Are there any players that you know of who may not be available for certain reasons? And are there maybe some potential new faces that are knocking on the door and potentially will be part of your plans?
Yeah, I think we've sent out probably the widest squad list I've ever sent out. Like it's a wide squad list because you've got guys that are constantly playing. I missed out people like Teshuak and Delhi who scored like at the weekend there. I mean, yeah, we've got so many players now that are actually playing, and I think that puts them in the picture for this World Cup qualification, but it also lends itself into the Gold Cup. So guys that may miss out on the World Cup qualification will definitely be in mind for Gold Cup selection. I think there are some challenges with trying to carry squads through 16 days of June and then 30 days of July and August. So I think with it, we've got such a big group that I've pretty much enveloped everyone in this selection. And, if you're saying like, are guys pushing through, they're probably on the list, guys that you're thinking about that have been, making a little mark in MLS or in Europe somewhere at the U23 level. So yeah, there's definitely a wide net being cast. And nobody's off the table. Like it's form in these next few weeks that are going to make a big difference. I mean, some of these young kids in MLS may make a difference. Theo Corbeau may make his Premier League debut and become one of the minimal few Canadians that have made that achievement of playing in the best league in the world. So, there's still like 3 weeks of stuff that's going to happen that'll probably tip my hat one way or another towards a few faces that could be fresh and new or more experienced faces.
Very interesting, John. I love the whole mindset, earned, not given. And that's what it sounds like is happening with the Canadian men's national team finally after all these years. Let's end on this just quickly on the Gold Cup. Are there players that might be available to play in both squads, both the qualifying and Gold Cup? And on top of that, from what you've learned about your team in the month of March and the players that you see and interact with on a more regular basis, are you any closer to figuring out how exactly you want to play and what players and what position? Do you have a better kind of vision of what this team will look like when it all comes together?
Well, I think, you adapt or die, and I think that's a critical part of my philosophy with this group of men. Like, as new players start to emerge, if you become rigid with your own mentality of this is the structure, style, approach that we're comfortable with, I think you're going to limit the opportunities for people, but also I think we put ourselves at risk. The window in June for me is very different to the Gold Cup, and the type of opponent that we'll face in June from Aruba to Suriname are very different, and then into Nicaragua versus Haiti, very different. So I think you'll see this team adapting through that period of time. One thing that is positive to us is we do have depth. We've got depth that gives us a chance to potentially rotate at times across different positions. But I think the simplicity for me is, again, given that we'll only have 4 days of preparation, 4 training sessions before our game, and given that we've only been together for a total of 9 days in sort of 2 years as a core group, coming up 2 years, you just got to keep things quite simple and pragmatic, looking at what these lessons these men can tell you about their careers. You know, people like Kyle, as I said it, you know, going into the Bermuda game, you know, there were things that he was displaying in his club environment that, you know, helped us along with some of the thinking to build some of the structures and strategies around him. But I think at the same time is the club habits. And I mentioned this last time, Gareth, when you're not working with these players consistently, their club habits under fatigue and pressure come through very strong. So again, I can have a mentality, which is a Canadian identity, a model of play, and we can develop that in our youth systems because you've got the total number of contacts that allow that to happen. But at the men's side, when you have 4 training contacts and 2 of them, you're allowed intensity in them, then you've got to be really pragmatic around what do you really need to do to get the best out of this group of men? Is it more about you as a coach and what you want, or is it what they really need to bring the best out of them in a moment that, you know, some of the things you've worked on will have gone out of their ear as soon as fatigue sets in and like I say, the pressure really sets on. So through this period, it'll be an adaptable Canadian team. You'll see us, you know, hopefully do things that give us the best chance to get these guys performing and, more importantly, get the result.
John, knowing you and your staff, I have no doubt you're going to have this team raring to go, as prepared as they possibly can be for these massive games coming up in June. Fingers crossed any big transfers for your players either happen early or happen late, not in the middle. So you take that out of the equation, and fingers crossed for good health as well for everyone involved with the Canadian men's national team. Good luck, John. Thank you as always. And we look forward to tracking step by step, kick by kick right here on OneSoccer.